small group. Thought we'd just go around, give your name and a little bit about what your business does. I'm John Wobbleton with Strategic Advisors. We're 5 partners that have 190 years of business experience. I finally found a business where having gray hair is actually a plus. But we help business owners buy, sell, and improve their businesses. We do this by doing our benchmark valuation. We help business sellers, folks like yourself, when you get to the point where you say, you know what, I'm ready for something different or retirement. We help business buyers. We work with private equity groups. We work with individuals looking to buy companies. And I think that's what gives us our unique perspective on helping folks do exit plans, because we actually work with buyers. So we know what they're doing. We know what drives value in businesses. Would one of you like to go first on just your name and what you do? Okay.
Sure. Good morning, y'all. My name is James Perkins, and my business is Motor Haven. We're a motorcycle safety course. Teach you how to ride a motorcycle. We start do our classroom times on a Friday evening, ride from Saturday to Sunday. Provide the motorcycles, helmets, gloves, everything for the course. We're also DMV, MSF certified, so the curriculum that you get is standardized throughout the state, throughout the country actually. We teach, like I said, we get the riding evaluation, written evaluation. Once we're done, we're third-party licensure, so we can license you and have you riding in no time. So I'm all about motorcycle safety. As you can see, I can go off with your road in today, enjoying the weather. So, Motor Haven, we're a motorcycle safety course.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Willa Parsons with You Design for the Home. I do interior design services. I provide our own line of products also. I wholesale to other designers, and I also do commercial spaces like Ulta, Starbucks. Willa Parsons, You Design for the Home.
Good morning, Barzell McKinney. I'm with Texas Realty, and we primarily do residential, now branching off into commercial real estate, property management, and asset management.
I'm Kenny Mizell. I'm actually John's favorite uncle.
Today you are.
Today.
But you also
Well,
have a small
I
business.
do a little remodeling
Yes.
on a construction, we own a construction company.
My name is Tom Keogh, retired Marine, company's Core Solutions. We do government consulting, primarily training and education for the Marine Corps.
My name is Tyrone Logan, defense contract company. We do intelligence, biometrics, forensics, IT, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosives. Thank you.
Do you two want to?
Sure. I think everybody knows me. Mary Parnell, I'm the assistant director here. I work with existing businesses, Susan's colleague, and we a tag team, and we love working with the small businesses.
And I'm Susan Ball. I work primarily with startup businesses. I'm the new venture specialist.
We've got to keep having startups, so the whole thing stops. How the coming tsunami of sellers affects the value of your business, why strategic planning is more important than ever. What we want to talk about is my talk is going to be in 3 parts. The first is external forces that affect your business. Second part, we'll talk about company-specific things that affect value. And the last part we'll talk about is the strategic planning process that we use to take owners through to go from no plan to having a mapped out strategy. And I always like the line, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So we try to give folks a map, a strategy for their future and the business's future. Since my son's been a little guy, we always try to, every time I see him, he's in North Carolina, I'm up here, we try to have a piece of trivia. I try to stump him with something that I don't know, and I don't know why that's doing that. But you folks as business owners, how many people that are millionaires you think inherited their wealth, percentage-wise? Anybody?
5.
20%. All right, how many do you think are business owners?
20%.
50%, either are self-employed or own a small business. What's the preferred car of millionaires? I was really wrong on this one.
Honda.
Nope.
No?
It's American.
Ford.
Chevy.
Ford. Ford's number one.
Oh,
Cadillac is number two, Lincoln is number three, which tells me that most millionaires are kind of like myself. They're a little older, because I don't see kids buying Fords and Cadillacs.
Your slide changes.
Must be on a timer.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Anyway, let's talk about, what I'm going to talk about first is some demographics. What's happening? We hear a lot about baby boomers, and I think some of you aren't in the baby boom generation, and some of us are. The baby boomers have made history in many ways. There's about 76 million baby boomers. They built the most houses at one time. They had the most college education, most cars. Well, they've also been the most entrepreneurial generation in history. There are about 15 million businesses in the United States today. Maybe 5 years ago there was 17 million, but the recession knocked that number back and it just hadn't rebounded yet. Of those 15 million, 9 million of those are baby boomers. So that tells us in the next 5 to 15 years that 60% of the business owners in America today are going to retire or expire, or one way or another, they're going to not be in business 15 years from now. So that's what we call our tsunami. This is going to be the largest transition of wealth that has ever happened in the world. Just to put some numbers to that. Those 9 million business owners control about $5 trillion worth of wealth, which is illiquid. Most of them, baby boomers didn't save like our parents did, meaning that most of them, anywhere from 70 to 90% of their net worth is tied up in these businesses. So they're going to need some sort of a liquidity event to transition out of this business to secure their financial future, their family's future, live their retirement dreams. They're going to need the cash that this transaction will provide. Let's talk a little bit more about baby boomers. These statistics came from a large regional bank in the Southeast. 65% of business owners today don't know what their business is worth. Most people, if you've got stocks and bonds, you look at your portfolio probably at least 2 or 3 times a year. Well, most business owners wait until they need to do a value for a partner going out or something before they actually find out what the business is worth. So they wait till the 11th hour. 85% of business owners have no written exit plan. White Horse Advisors, a company in Atlanta, did a survey of several hundred business owners, and 97% of them said that exit planning is important, but 85% said we have no plan. And like I said, if you have no plan, you don't know what road you're going to take, or you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Amazingly though, 27% of these business owners plan to exit in the next 5 to 10 years. So what do we have? 65% don't know what their business is worth, 85% don't have a plan, and yet 27% plan to be gone in the next 5 years. What does that really mean? That means that a lot of businesses are not going to be prepared to sell, and they're going to sell for lower values because we know supply and demand. I've just shown you the baby boomers, 90% of them, or 60% of business owners are going to go in the next 5 to 15 years. Let's look at a few more statistics. 75% of owners plan to sell or transition their business. Well, I'm a boomer myself, and I realize that 100% of us are going to sell or transition in one way or the other. I guess the thing is, do you have a plan or do you just let it happen? 60% have delayed. Well, the recession and downturn in 2008 has affected, it's delayed. Many of those owners have worked hard since that time to get the value back where it was. In New York Stock Exchange, what stocks lost 50 or 60% of their value. Well, Private capital markets kind of work the same way. So when the stock market goes down, they go down as well. 42% of owners thought maximizing value was their number one goal. I find that a little bit low because most of the owners we deal with, their goal is to maximize value. And you think about it, you want to get as much off the table as you can. The only time owners consider lower values is when they maybe want to do an ESOP, because I'll show you in a little bit that an ESOP normally gives you a lower value than selling to an outsider. Or if you've got managers and you want to do what we call an MBO, a management buyout, then you get just a little bit lower price. 23% are looking to expand opportunities. In the M&A world, we say you can grow the hard way, which is beat your competition, or you can grow the easy way, which is eat your competition. Many times it's easier and less risky to grow by acquisition than it is to do organic growth. Because think about it, you hire a few more sales guys, try to bump up your revenues, where your competitor across the town, he hires a few more sales guys, and it kind of goes back and forth. Well, you may be able to buy your competitor. And what we just said works. He may be a baby boomer, he may be 5 years from retiring, he may have had no plan, and you may be able to buy that business at a very good price. What we've talked about to this point is external market forces and how that affects your business's value. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. You?
Great. What we're going to talk about now is valuation drivers. What drives value in your business? And a lot of times business owners will ask us, do you know our industry or whatever? Well, we always have a rule of thumb. We don't really do restaurants and we don't do retail, but we kind of work with everybody in the middle, because if you think about it, all businesses have the same basic components and parts. These valuation drivers are what we get from working with buyers of businesses and working with private equity groups and business owners that have been through the process and know what drives value in business. Industry considerations. It's always the industry. If you were the buggy whip manufacturer when the Model A Ford came out, you may have had the best buggy whip manufacturing business, but all of a sudden you had no market. Quality of life. Some industries are seen as in vogue at certain times and others not. Competition. Are you in an industry where the competition is increasing? Technological change. Is there a change that's making what you do, making your market share decrease while something increases? Management and staff. Is your business dependent on you? That's one of the big things. Do you have a second in charge that can come in and run the business? I always ask people, if you go on vacation for 2 weeks, how many times do you talk to your folks at the office? If you talk to them 2 or 3 times a day, your business is dependent on you. And it always will be to some extent, but delegating roles and responsibilities to people, letting them learn, and that means letting them make some mistakes. Many times the owner will have a good second or third person that could step up and do these things, but the owners don't want to let go of the reins. They don't want to let that person make those mistakes. Employment agreements. When it gets closer to a transaction, a buyer looks very favorably if your key managers have employment agreements that tie them to the company for a certain period of time. What many folks do is what we call a stay bonus. We'll say, okay, these 3 are key to our operations. We will give them some sort of a bonus, work out a plan if they stay through the transition, say for a period of 2 to 3 years. Procedures and job descriptions. I don't know if any of you've ever done or read Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth. It's an excellent, excellent read. He talks about you should have procedures like a franchise does. Even if you don't plan to franchise, you need to have policies and procedures for hiring, for firing, for sales, for the administrative processes, management processes, budgeting process. The more you have written down when a buyer comes in to look at your business, the more it is worth. That's what we call transferable value. HR and training. There's a big book written by a guy we work with. It says how to make your company more valuable in the eyes of private equity groups, and he calls human resources a lurking powder keg. And if you think about it, most employers, if they're going to get a lawsuit, who's it going to be from? Probably a former employee. So having good records, documentation of those things is preventing a lawsuit, which is anytime lawsuit, just equate risk with value. Anytime business risk goes up, value goes down, and vice versa. Quality of earnings in the past. A potential buyer likes to see a couple of years of steady profits or increase in profits. Or if your profits, which all businesses in 2008 took a dive and they're now coming back up, if you can explain why there was a dip in your profits. All this directly goes to value. Type of financial statements. Most owners have tax returns or compiled financial statements. We tell our clients if you're within 2 to 3 years of a potential sale, that reviewed or audited financial statements are a great investment. Many buyers and private equity groups will tell you that usually your business will sell on a multiple of something. That's your cash flow, seller's discretionary earnings, but audited financial statements can be worth at least 1 turn of your profit. So let's say if you've got $100,000 annual profit, those audited financial statements would make your business sell for another $100,000. Historical profits get you a seat at the table, but what sells a business is future cash flow. You need to have a 3 to 5 year performance projection, and I tell people you should be doing a rolling pro forma, because when a buyer comes to look and sits at the table, the best way he can know that you're going to hit your targets in the future is the fact that you've hit them in the past. You know, nothing impresses them more than you set these targets for the last 3 years and you hit them or exceeded them. Solid plan for the future. We tell owners that if you don't have a plan for the future, one of 2 things happens. Either the person looking at your business won't be able to see how to grow that business, or the prospective buyer will see a way that you haven't seen, and he'll pay you less than you think it's worth. So we tell people you need to have a good growth plan going forward. Where are you going to be 3 years, 5 years from now? And in these performers, you need to base the assumptions on something that you can validate. Like I said, prior history of hitting targets. Did you hit your targets 3 years ago? Balance sheet. Many owners have personal things on their books. It could be an airplane for a bigger company. It could be an apartment or condo in the mountains for skiing. We tell, if you're getting close to the point where you're thinking about transitioning, exiting, and selling your business, get those off the books. Many owners have stockholder loans where maybe they didn't want to take out the compensation and be taxed on it, so they took a loan. Well, that's going to come from when somebody buys your business, they're going to buy it debt-free. So if you're a couple of years from selling the business, paying off that debt is putting money in your bank account at closing. Like I said, personal assets, receivables and payables. I have a CPA background, so I have many owners that they'll bring me their books at the end of the year, and their balance sheet has one thing on it, but if you look at their subsidiary ledgers, they don't tie. And I always say, you don't have clean books and records if your CPA has to make 30 or 40 journal entries at the end of the year. And a buyer looks at these things. They look at these subsidiary ledgers. They go through what's called a due diligence process, and they're going to dig into all of your numbers. Let's talk about some more value drivers, and these are more intangible things. Clients and vendors. Do you have a concentration of revenues? In some businesses, that's unavoidable. If you work with the federal government or the state government, then they're probably going to be the lion's share of your revenues. But many of us, if we have a broader range of customers, if any 2 or 3 customers is more than 50% of your revenue base, then that's seen as risk. And me, as a prospective buyer, I would probably want to discount the value of the business if it's dependent on 2 or 3 revenue sources. Are you dependent on a single vendor? Some people, we've got a client down in Virginia Beach who sells for one particular factory. Well, that's a risky business model because he doesn't have a long-term contract with this factory, so at any minute his revenue stream could be cut. That's risk. Long-term contracts. If you have contracts with your customers that reach over 2 to 3 years, if you have service agreements, those are things that increase value. I always use the thing like a heating and air business. The construction side is valued different than the service work, because if they've got homeowners locked into a 2-year service agreement, well, the buyer knows that revenue stream is locked in for the next couple of years. The risk and earnout, anytime we have a concentration of revenues or that sort of thing, most buyers are going to do some sort of earnout, meaning they would buy your business for one price and say, we will pay you an additional amount 3 years from now based on how the company performs. That's called an earnout. Stability. Is your business a family business that's in its 3rd generation? It's been around 40 years. If that's the case, then that raises value. Size. Anytime size is small, risk is high. So as your business gets bigger, your risk goes down, meaning your company, if you've got 10 employees versus 500 employees, you can see how the risk would go down greatly as you get bigger and bigger. Industry change. Many times there are external forces, like we talked about earlier, that affect the value of your business. Sometimes industries go and come because of technological change. Competition. First time when we go in and start talking and doing our evaluation with our clients is we will say, why do your customers do business with you instead of your competition? You'd be surprised many don't have an answer. Are you the competition, or are you fighting off the competition? Competitive advantage. If you're number 1 or number 2 in your market, that drives value higher. Do you have a niche? Do you do something better than any of your competitors, and is that a niche that you can sustain in the future? Do you have a plan? Like I said, it goes back to, do you have a written plan? And many owners will say, well, I've got a plan, so I've got it in my head. Well, you can't sit at a table and talk to a prospective buyer and give them the plan that's in your head. That doesn't create transferable value. A well-documented, well-thought-out plan. And we always say, when you have a plan for your business, it doesn't have to be a plan that you can afford. It could be what you would do if you had more resources, because your buyer, especially if it's a private equity group or something of that nature, they have deeper pockets. They may be able to act on your plan. But if you can show them the way forward with that business, you've increased your value. Buyer-seller motivation. This is the #1 factor that drives business value. You, Mr. Business Owner, you're burnt out, you've had enough, you just can't take it anymore. What's the difference between boredom and burnout? So price can vary anywhere from 20 to 50% based on buyer and seller motivation. We just worked with a client who's a tennis player, and he has the resources, he wants to buy a business. We found him a tennis marketing firm in Texas, and his initial offer was 10% higher than the seller was asking. He wants this business that bad. So you may be in a situation where a buyer really wants your business. Or like I said, you could be the seller over here that really needs to get out of it. Baby boomers. Lay on top of buyer-seller motivation, the baby boomers. One of the facts I didn't mention a little earlier was baby boomers are about 76 million. The Gen Xers, which is the next generation, I think is 45 or 46 million. So you have one generation that's getting ready to sell, and you've got 20 million less buyers. Supply and demand. It's going to happen. This is going to create a buyer's market. The thing we always say, though, is a good business with a plan and a strategy is always going to find a buyer. Good businesses always sell. It doesn't matter if the economy is down, the economy is up, good businesses sell. Goodwill is a thing that most owners don't truly understand, so we always like to kind of walk you through what goodwill is. Let's say you've got a business and you've got 10 trucks, some desks, some furniture, and let's say they're worth $500,000. Okay, so your hard assets are worth $500,000. Let's say in your industry, we look at what's called market comps. That's just like a real estate agent will go out and look at your house, and they'll look and see what the one down the road sold for. If businesses are selling for a multiple of 3, let's say your business throws off $500,000 a year, multiple of 3 would mean it would be worth $1.5 million. So you've got assets of $500,000, you've got a value of $1.5 million, so your goodwill is worth $1 million. That's simply it. It's the difference between the selling price and what your hard fixed assets are worth. What goes into goodwill? The predictability and quality of your future cash flows. That goes back to that projection. How good a narrative you can develop for a potential buyer. You know, we've done this for the last 3 to 5 years. This is what we're going to do for the next 5 years. Factors that increase goodwill. These things are, they don't really affect profits today, but they affect profits and cash flow over time. Let's review. Like I said, a rosy forecast of the future. A forecast that you can defend to a potential buyer, not dependent on the owner. I'll get back to my vacation analogy. If you can go on vacation for 2 weeks and you come back and everything's still humming along, then you've got transferable value there. You've got something that somebody will buy. Effective management team. Do you have an operations guy, a sales guy, and a finance guy or girl that can handle those pieces of the business? Systems that allow scalability. If you've got a business in Stafford, is that a model that a buyer could come in and replicate that model in 2 other towns? Scalable. Visions, goals, metrics, and plans. It always comes back to this planning thing. You have to have a plan. You have to have a narrative that a buyer can buy into. Brand name or recognition. We're talking motorcycles. Harley-Davidson's done real good with the brand name and recognition. Is your business recognizable in your community with the customers that you deal with? Service or product reliability. If your service or product is better than the competition, that builds goodwill. Have you done a customer satisfaction survey? Many times when we start working with owners, we will suggest that they sign up for one of the online services where your customers can go in and you incentivize them to take a survey and see how happy they really are with the business. Those are things that increase goodwill. Let's talk about some things that decrease goodwill. Unclear roles and responsibilities. I always tell people, if your controller also does administrative work and answers the telephone, that's what we call kind of a red flag. Ownership needed daily. And let's face, my business model, I am the owner. I won't have anything to pass on to anyone else unless I find a younger person. So, my business needs me every day. Senior people are not thinkers. I often ask people, who in your company is the person that comes up with the new ideas, thinks of the innovative things that make your business better than the others? And most of the time the owner says, that's me. It's good to have another person in the wings that's thinking, acting, ownership thinking, we call it. Inconsistent decision making. And that goes back to unclear roles and responsibilities. Now we're going to talk about value and how your business is valued. And I would tell you that business valuation is more of an art than a science. I think if you collected 3 or 4 evaluators in one room and asked them what a business is worth, you'd get a range of answers, because it goes back to those things we talked about. You can do financial analysis all you want to. It goes back to the motivation of the buyer and the seller. So you're always going to get a range. The lowest, I think, one of the good things to remember is the range. There's 3 positions in this range. Fair market value is probably on the lower end of the scale. Investment value is in the middle. Strategic value is the highest. We'll just go over where you might fall or where businesses fall in this range. Internal transfers, if you've got a son or a daughter that's going to take over your business and you're going to sell and gift the stock to them, that's going to be at fair market value. If you are going to sell to management, like we talked about at MBO, a management buyout, that's going to be on the lower end of the scale. An ESOP is also a retirement plan where your company shares are put in the plan, and that's going to be at fair market value. That's regulated by the IRS. Investment value. These are going to be external transfers. It's going to be sale to a competitor. It's going to be an individual investor. What drives investment value is basically a rate of return. And I'll give you this sort of an example. When we come up with a business value, we do what's called our sanity check on it. And a price for your business has to do 3 things. It has to provide a living wage for the guy that or girl that buys it. It has to provide a rate of return, and it has to be able to make the debt payment on the loan for the money they borrowed, because most business transactions, they're going to pay a third in cash, and they're going to go somewhere to get financing. So they're going to go to a bank, a relative, a private equity group, somewhere to find financing for 2/3 of it. Like I said, investment value is private equity groups, and that may be a platform company. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And the value I talked about, your business is looked at 2 ways. You look at the market comps, just like real estate. The other way is capitalization of earnings, meaning we take your cash flow and we capitalize it based on some rate of return. I always tell people a good way to think of this is, if the rate of return is 25% and you've got $1 million worth of cash flow, then your business is worth $4 million. It's really very simply that. Where the issues come into is coming up with that capitalization rate, and that's beyond the scope of this course, so that's all I'll say about it now. Strategic value, that's when somebody sees your business and they're a publicly traded company, or might be a competitor, and there's synergies between your business and their business. And what's a synergy? That means there's cost savings. There's something that if I buy your business, we do the same thing, we can cut some positions, we can synergize our two businesses, meaning we can increase the cash flow. And if you are the seller of your business, you get a piece of those synergies. So that's the high end of the value range. This could be a private equity group which does an add-on or a bolt-on is what we call it. What a private equity group does is they buy one bigger company. And then if you're in their particular industry, they will come in and buy smaller ones to add on to this. So we've got a platform and then we do add-ons. And they build a bigger company. And their average idea is to stay in a business 5 to 7 years, and then they turn around and sell it. It goes public, or they sell it. Smaller private equity groups sell to bigger private equity groups. Let's talk about headwinds. That's kind of a recap of some of the things we've covered. We know that there are going to be more sellers than buyers in the next 5 to 15 years because the baby boomers, they're going to go somewhere. They're going to die with their boots on. They're going to sell their business, and many of them will work until they drop because they love what they do. And let's face it, people are, even though they're 65, they're healthier than they were 20 or 30 years ago, so they may very well work until the end. And I'll tell the owner, you still need a plan, because let's say you, like I said, die with your boots on. If you don't have a plan for the succession of your business, the government always has a plan. And that may be to take 1/3 to 1/2 of the value of your business, and your heirs may have to pay that. So it's better to have a strategy. I tell people when you pass away, going back to my CPA days, there's 3 buckets. And your wealth and what you have is going to go one of 3 places. Most people, preferably your family, your heirs, your sons, your daughters. It's going to go to charity if you have access, or there's a final bucket that the IRS gets. So it's 3 buckets. It's going to be family, charity, or the government. And most business owners that I know tend to not to like to pay income tax. That's almost universal. No matter what industry they're in, they really don't like taxes. The economy and taxes, who knows what's coming out of Washington, D.C. I'm further from the capital than you guys. Maybe you guys have a better feel for it than we do. But down in Virginia Beach, we're like confused. We don't know where it's going. And we don't think either party can get us there. Lack of preparation. Of the things, the headwinds, the thing that you can do is be prepared. And I often tell people, you may be 15 years away from selling your business, but having a plan and talking about the things that we've talked about here in the planning process makes your business a better business. That's why we start all conversations with owners. We do our evaluation first, because we look at the company and we have an honest dialogue with the owner, and we'll tell you what it's worth, and we'll tell you why we think it's worth that. We'll say, we think these are good things, we think these things need improvement. So that's what we call our keystone. We start our planning with evaluation. And here's something to think about. The markets go in cycles, and it's basically about a 10-year cycle. And if you'll remember, 2008, almost recession, well, that did turn out to be right. 2007-8, things went down, and they're on the way back up. So you can translate that into, if you're getting out in the next 10 years, there's certainly a better time to sell. So we say 2010, and we get reports called Market Watch and those sorts of things, and they say that from about 2014 to 16 or 18 are good years, and then we'll see that cycle go down again. Prescriptions, some things that you can do. Like we always tell people, know the value of your business. We find that owners almost universally, now once in a while, owners will know what their business is worth, but almost all owners think their business is worth more than it is. And why is that? Business owners, entrepreneurs are great. I mean, they're optimistic. They don't see the risk that a buyer would see. So we almost always find universally, if you ask an owner what he thinks his business is worth and we do evaluation, it will be less. The other thing owners do is they overestimate their value to the business. If I step back, this business running by itself, what's it worth without me? That's why we said have a second in command that can take over and run the business. If you can go on vacation for 2 weeks and it runs and hums along while you're gone, you've got a very valuable business. Prepare well in advance of transition. Nothing beats planning. Clean up your balance sheet. We already talked about that. If you've got personal assets or personal debt on the books of your business, get them off of there. Your buyer is not going to pay off your debts. He's going to buy your assets or stock net of any debt. It's a good idea we talked about cash flow. Cash flow is defined in 2 or 3 ways in the M&A world. I don't know if any of you have heard the term EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. That's a fancy word for cash flow. How much cash is it throwing off? Another way it might be called EBIT, which is earnings before interest and taxes, because a buyer is going to have a different tax structure than you. So we add back interest and taxes, and he's going to have his own financing. Or a simpler way for a smaller business is called SDE, which is seller's discretionary earnings. That's basically what do you get from the business in stock dividends, your salary, and your perks. And that's always a good, we did a valuation on a small business earlier this year. It was a moving and storage business. And I started saying, okay, you've got your son working here, your wife works here, you work here. What are the things that are paid for out of this business that a buyer wouldn't have to do? Discretionary items or perks. Well, we identified cell phones, cars, gasoline. Every family member had a credit card. By the time we got through looking at it, it was $48,000 worth of perks that we added back to cash flow. So we increased the value of that business by showing the buyer that these things are discretionary and the buyer wouldn't have to do that. That's powerful when you do that. Say a multiple of 4, $50,000 worth of those types of items increases the value of your business $200,000. The multiplier effect is what we call it. View your business as an investment. I think it's Michael Gerber that has the line, work. You work in your business and not on your business. Sometimes you need to step back and work on it, not in it. I just talked about the moving and storage business. We took this owner and his family, the wife and the husband own the business. They have been gifting a small piece of stock to their son. Well, he was approached by an external party as unsolicited offer to buy the business. So we went in to check to see if the offer was indeed a good price. And we did our evaluation, and the owner actually was surprised that the business was worth a lot more than he thought it was. And so what came out of that process, his son, his goal is not to sell to an outsider. His idea is to bring his son up through the ranks. He's a supervisor manager now. He wants him to be the GM or the CEO at some point. So now we've started a conversation, and we're going to go in, because that's another part of what we do. We go in, if we do a value on your company, we come back 12 months and at 24 months, and we redo the valuation so we can see if you actually are increasing value. So now this son knows what he's working for. He knows that his stock in his dad's company is worth X, whereas before he had no idea really why he was showing up every morning. I think that's motivation and incentive. There's also a not so successful story I tell everybody, and that goes to this bag of peanuts. I know the guy, I'll just say Billy. Billy invented the honey roasted peanut. He was a farmer in North Carolina about 30 years ago, and everybody knows about honey roasted peanuts, right? Who's not had one? Billy invented this because prior to what he did at NC State University with their food scientists, the peanuts and honey is sticky. So they would clump together in a ball and cook that way, and that was useless. They figured a way to do this. Billy had a little company called Carolina Peanut, and it was chugging along. Sales were doubling every 6 months. I mean, it was just amazing. And as you know, as you grow your operating capital, you need more money. Billy needed money. So he went out and talked to a couple of people, used his small town attorney and small town CPA. Lo and behold, Anheuser-Busch is interested in his peanuts. He does a deal. They get 80% of his company for $3 million. And, you know, that's not, today we don't think of millions of dudes like we used to. Well, that was a big payday to Billy. He had 20%. They were going to grow. He was going to stay on as a vice president. Well, as he calls them, the St. Louis Mafia, there were some things left out of this purchase agreement. So they started doing a capital improvement program. They wanted to force Billy out. So at the end of the first year, they had squeezed him down from 20% to 12%. And he saw, I mean, the documents clearly allowed them to do that because Billy didn't have good representation. He didn't have a plan. He was winging it. Anheuser-Busch with Eagle Snacks, they didn't make it in the snack food industry. They couldn't compete against Lance and Frito-Lay and those guys, so they sold the business to a private equity group. It's now called Ann's House of Nuts. It's the world's largest producer and packager of trail mix. It's got a market cap of about $400 million. So Billy's 20%, and he may not have had the full 20 when it happened, could have been worth $80 million. So I always tell owners, have a plan. Don't end up with peanuts. And I hope that if you take nothing else from this, every time you eat a peanut, you're going to say, I'll be thinking about a plan. Have a strategic plan. Retain what Billy could have spent $25,000 on a good attorney that knew M&A and avoided this, kept this from ever happening. I mean, because think about it. My attorney knows real estate. He may know a little business transactions, but if I'm going to do a deal, I'm going to get somebody that knows M&A. I'm going to get somebody that this is not the first deal they've ever looked at. Sometimes it pays to have very good advisors. What I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes in the presentation is going to be the process that we take owners through. And it comes from this book, Exiting Your Business, Protecting Your Wealth. It's written by John Leonetti. It's an excellent primer, and we actually offer a free copy of the book. All you have to do is go to our website and request a copy, and we'll gladly send it to you. But it goes over the planning process and your options, and it's just a great introduction to strategic planning. I myself am a certified business exit consultant, and the course I went through is based on this book, and it's we're a network. Pinnacle Equity Solutions is probably 150 around the country. So we have a network of the cutting edge, best thinkers in the business. We do a lot of training. We do a lot of newsletters and that sort of thing. So we like to think we're very up on what's happening. What is an exit strategy? An exit strategy is written goals for the succession of the businesses, ownership and control derived from a well thought out and properly timed plan that considers all factors, all interested parties, and the personal goals of the owners in a manner and a time period that is accommodative to the business, its shareholders, and the potential buyers. Let's think about this just a second. We often hear folks talking about succession planning. Well, succession planning ensures the future success of the business. Do you have somebody to take and run the business? Your succession plan could be successful, but your exit plan may not be if it leaves you financially vulnerable or your goals and desires are not accomplished. So just because the business goes on successfully doesn't mean you have gotten what you need from your business, whether it's financial or your goals and whatever they may be, it can go on and you can still be vulnerable. We use a 6-step process, and the card I put on your table there has our process, and you'll see that we have flipped it around a little bit. We say knowing the value of your business is number one. And why do we do that? We often say that setting your goals may change if you find out your business is worth $10 million. You may have some new goals. Those goals could be charity, they could be your family, or if you find out the value of your business is lower than you thought, then that definitely changes your goals, your aspirations. So know the value of your business, set your exit goals, financial readiness, mental readiness, identify the owner, the type of exiting owner you are, learn and choose your option, and then execute your plan. I'm going to go into those just a little bit. And since we started a little late, what is my time?
It's 10 after 10.
10 after 10, okay, great. Setting your goals. What is it that you want to accomplish when you exit your business? Financial readiness. What we do, what percentage of your network is tied up in your business? And what we find most of the time is most business owners, the large part of their net worth is in that business. To get rich, you need a lot of one thing. To stay rich, you need a lot of many different things. And any financial advisor tells you diversification, right? You need so many stocks, so many bonds. Well, when you've got all of your net worth in your business, that's more risky because you're not diversified. All your eggs in that one basket. I'm going to kind of walk through what we would do with an owner. And this owner's Bill. And Bill takes $280,000 out of his business each year. He's got a 401k plan. He's got $800,000 in it. We're going to assume a 7% rate of return, and our example probably needs to reflect the newer market norm, so we'd say about a 4%. He's got other sources of income. It could be military retirement, it could be rental property. He's got $56,000 a year in pre-tax income. So his lifestyle is what he's getting from his business plus that other income is $466,000 a year. So if we take the business piece out of that, that's $410,000 a year. That's a shortfall, and so that tells us that what he needs to get to keep his same lifestyle, and most people don't like to dial back their lifestyle. They don't like to decide what we're going to live without. So he needs to sell his business for $4.8 million, or $5.8 million. We call that our value gap. That's the assets you need when you get out of your business versus your current level of savings. Like I said, this value gap happens to be $5.8 million. We do an exit quadrant when we're planning with owners. The first part of that quadrant is financial readiness, and it goes low to high. Certainly, if you have high financial readiness, meaning you've been a good saver, you're really not dependent on the sale of your business for your future lifestyle. You have more options than a person that has to have that money for their future. So what is the ideal? Like I said, achieve diversification. What you want to go from is, say, 90% of your wealth tied up in your business to, let's say, 20%. You want some equity, some fixed income, maybe a beach house or a boat, whatever your goals are. Mental readiness. Many owners, and I've got one that I just worked with, he's a tax client, but he sold his business to a private equity group about 5 years ago. He has enough, he's got a home in Florida, he's got a home in Virginia Beach, and he's got financial security. But when I talk to him, I can see that he doesn't know what he's going to do with the rest of his life, so he's not mentally ready to exit his business. I mean, he was joking, he says, I think I'll buy a pizza stand. And his administrative assistant looked at me and said, yeah, and you'll work 10 or 12 hours a day at that. I mean, this guy is a workaholic. He says, John, I can't play with so much golf. He's really scared. He doesn't know what to do. And I sent him a book or two, and I said, read these. I mean, the guy successfully sold his company to a private equity group for enough money to retire securely. Certainly, he could be a consultant. He could teach. He could work for a private equity fund. There are things he can do, but many of them don't look past the four walls of their office to see what is out there. And that's an important. And we'll tell you when we sit down, if somebody says, okay, John, I won't sell my business. And we look at it and say, okay, we think your business is worth $4 million. We don't move forward with this client unless they can articulate to us exactly why they won't sell the business. Because an owner getting cold feet in the process kills more deals than anything else. Now I'm talking about a deal where you've got a good business. If that owner doesn't really know what he wants to do, if he can't see himself in the future, then we're very likely not going to take that client, because we get paid like real estate. If we actually do a sales transaction, we get paid like a real estate broker. And if we get him all the way to the finish line and he says, you know what, I just can't do this, then we don't get paid. When you begin to think about exiting your business, you need to consider whether you view it as a job or an investment. Like I said, do you work on your business or in your business? What are exit barriers? We talked about those, having the management team, having yourself prepared for the next stage of life. Many people don't know what that next stage is. How involved are you in the day-to-day running of your business? Do you have a plan as to how you'll spend your leisure time? Are you going to go to community college and do a little teaching? Are you going to become a consultant and work in the industry that you just came out of? There are many things, but you have to see yourself, like I always say, I'm visual, you have to see yourself in a picture down the road somewhere doing something. Do you look at your business as providing you with a return on invested capital, or are you more interested in the lifestyle? Let's face it, most owners look at a business from the perspective of what I get out of it. Company car, I get a good salary, I get some dividends, distributions. And they don't really, and the other thing, like I said, minimizing taxes. All owners want to pay no or as low taxes as possible. Think about this. In the last 2 to 3 years before you sell your business, actually paying taxes is a good thing because we're showing more profits. And people pay for profits. They don't pay for, NOLs are nice for the IRS, but people don't like to buy NOLs unless they see a way to do something that you don't, and the price is going to reflect that. Are you addicted to your business? I just talked about Bill. He was addicted to his business. He truly didn't know what the next step was. Mental readiness. So we looked at financial readiness. Now we're looking at mental readiness, and we're going to tie these all together. In our exit quadrant, we have financial readiness is vertical, horizontal is mental readiness. So we can plot where an owner falls on both of these axes. We have owner types. What we do is once we look at financial and mental readiness, we can categorize owners into one of 4 groups. Get me out right now for the most money. Well, that's the guy that I said was burnout, but he's got low financial readiness, so he needs to sell it for a strategic value. So he went from boredom to, burnout to boredom really quick, and he's ready to go. He can't stick around. And how does that limit his options? Like we talked about, a private equity group or some sorts of folks, they're going to want you to stay 2 to 3 years after you sell the business to them and run it for them. That reduces their risk. Or you're well off but choose to keep working. Many owners have set enough money aside and they can sell, they could sell the business. They don't really need the money it would provide, but they choose to keep working. They love what they do. That's a good position to be in. Stick around and grow. We find most of the owners we deal with in the earlier stage of their business, that's where they are. because they're gonna need a transaction to ensure their future. But, like I said, we look at the value and it's usually lower than they think it is. And so as we increase value, we increase their post-exit lifestyle. Rich and ready to leave. That's probably the best position to be in, because this is a person that doesn't need the proceeds from the business. Buyer-seller motivation. Here we've taken those 4 owner types and we've put them on our quadrant chart. You'll see high financial readiness and low mental readiness is well off but choose to work. Well, has to work. You can get the gist here. Learn your exit option. This is where I'm going to talk about. There are basically 5 ways to get out of your business. You can sell it to an external party. This is a competitor, a private equity. You can do what's called a private equity group recapitalization, a PEG recap. This is where somebody comes in and says, John, you've built a great business. We want to buy it. We want you to stay here for 3 to 5 years. So they'll come in and buy control. They usually like to get 80%. And if I'm a owner that has low mental readiness and I want to keep working, this is a good strategy because it allows me to take 80% of the value of my company and put it in the bank. So I've taken my money off the table and we're now using the private equity group. I still have a 20% slice, however, that private equity group's going to sell 5 years from now. So we call that a second bite of the apple. And many times, that's going to be worth more than the original 80% piece. Stock ownership, ESOPs, employee stock ownership plans. They are very misunderstood. Many owners think that an ESOP is going to give control of the business to their employees, and nothing could be further from the truth. With an ESOP, an owner actually creates a market for his shares. And here's a statistic. Only 20% of businesses for sale will ever sell to an external buyer. So for the rest of those businesses, you're going to have to create a market or create a buyer. And an ESOP allows you to do that. Management buyout, again, you've got a VP of sales or operations or finance that knows the business well. You think he can run the business. The only thing is, I'll just say that with a management buyout, it's risk because most of the time, your managers aren't going to have the money to buy you out, so you're going to finance it. Anytime you finance something, you're going to bear the risk. Gifting programs. Like I said, you may have a son or a daughter that's in your business, been working in the business 15 years. They know the business, you think they can run it, and they want to run it. Well, another thing, risk. Just remember that when you do it, an internal transaction, there's going to be risk because you're going to be the bank. You're going to be the financer. There is a 6th one. We often say just jokingly, if the owner doesn't make a plan, he gets to the end, he's burnt out, he turns out the lights, sells his inventory on eBay, lays off the people and goes home. But it does happen. Did you know more businesses fail from that than they do from actual financial difficulties? Very few, and we see statistically, most of them fail because there was no continuation plan. We talked about the range of values. Let's kind of compare those to these options. Sale to an outside company or outside buyer, that's a synergy value. That's the high value. A recapitalization, which I talked about when a private equity group comes in and buys a chunk of your business, that's going to be an investment value. They like to get about a 30% return on their investment. So they're going to look at your cash flow and they'll calculate a price that gives them that rate of return. Because what they've done, and actually the good thing working for business owners these days is private equity groups, there are 3.3 I'm trying to get this. 3.3 billion, no, $330 billion sitting in private equity funds. Since the economy turned down in 2008, that money's just sitting there, sitting on the sidelines. And these guys, they have a third of the money in equity, the rest they borrow. That means that there's $1.2 trillion sitting on the sidelines waiting to buy good businesses. In 2008, 07, when the economy was, or before the economy turned down, you had to have $2 million in cash flow a year before private equity groups would look at you. Now they've lowered that to $500,000, and that's for a platform company. And you can have earnings less than that, and they're interested because if they've bought that platform and they're adding on to it, there's so much money out there. And what happens, private equity funds, there's two types. One of them is a pledged fund, and one of them is a committed fund. If you're dealing with one, you want a committed fund because that means the money's already in the bank. A pledged fund means that me and Kenny and 2 or 3 of us, we've said we will put our money in. Well, that could or may not happen. So a pledged fund is the best one. But anyway, these funds have a lot of money, and they are out here. I'll bet you I get 15 emails a day from different private equity groups telling us we're interested in this. Have you seen this sort of company? So they're out there, they're buying. Management buyout is going to be somewhere between investment value and fair market value, depending on how you structure the transaction. Employee stock ownership plans, going to be fair market value set by the IRS. Gifting, same thing, son or daughter, relative, it's going to be fair market value. What I'm going to do now is overlay the types of exit in our financial mental readiness quadrant. If you've got a high financial readiness, low mental readiness, you can do a management buyout, meaning you can stay there for a while. You can gift it to son or daughter and work part-time, or you can do the ESOP. And the cool thing about an ESOP really is here, you can put 30 to 40% of your company, or you could put all of it in an ESOP. The good thing, if you get tax benefits, you have to put 30%. That's an IRS regulation. You can sell your shares to an ESOP, and 3 years from now, you can sell your company, the whole company, to someone else. Putting shares in an ESOP doesn't prevent you from doing anything down the road. It gives you your options. If you've got high financial readiness and high mental readiness, you're the guy or girl with the most options. Gift, charity, ESOP, sell, you name it, it's available to you.
John?
Yes.
John, real quick,
Go ahead.
Does it matter whether or not you're, how you're structured, LLC, C Corp, S Corp?
For the ESOP?
Correct.
Not really. There are some tax benefits if you're a C Corp. There's called Section 1042, meaning you could sell your shares in your business to your ESOP trust, and that's what it is. It's set up as a trust. And you can take that money and put it in the stock market and never pay any tax. That's only open to C Corps. It's not open to S Corps. If you're an S corporation, it's still, an ESOP is a really cool vehicle to get some money out, because think about this. Let's say and I use $1 million because it's an easy number. Let's say your business throws off $1 million of income every year. Well, you pay, the federal government gets 39%, the state of Virginia gets 6%, so you're losing close to 45%. So of that $1 million, $450,000 going to taxes. If I take half the stock of my S corporation and put it in an ESOP trust is tax-free. So we just prevented paying taxes on half. We've cut what Uncle Sam was getting from $450,000 to $225,000. And guess what? Those tax savings go to help pay Mr. or Mrs. owner that has sold those shares to the ESOP. So you're actually being paid back from tax-free money. That's really, really a neat thing. Like I said, ESOPs are very misunderstood. Owners think that by putting shares in an ESOP trust that the employees somehow have control. Well, an ESOP trustee has control. And that's usually a very knowledgeable, or an attorney many times. And just remember this, if that ESOP owns 30%, ESOP is still a minority shareholder, meaning you still have 70%, you still drive the boat. You don't have to worry. And that doesn't mean that the employees now get access to your books and records. They don't. They don't get to see anything. All they see each year is a statement that shows that my shares in the company are worth this. So there's an administrative burden with an ESOP, meaning you have to get it valued every year. There's some startup costs, but if you think about it, if you're going to sell your business and you're going to get representation, you're going to lose a percentage of it anyway because you've had to pay somebody that does what we do, or a broker or some sort of thing. So there's transaction costs no matter which way you go. So we tell people that, you know, just don't discount the idea of an ESOP because you think it's too expensive, it's too burdensome, and that sort of thing. Many people now, we know ESOP attorneys all over the country. You can get an ESOP set up and going, and this number you made, for $50,000 plus the valuation. And that may sound expensive, but it's cheaper than you would have paid a broker or an M&A person to sell your business. And let's face it, you can't sell a third of your business to anybody. Who's going to buy in as a minority shareholder? I wouldn't. I won't control. Private equity groups won't control. So, where do you go? Which option is right for you? Well, only you know that. Let's talk about selling to a competitor. You may choose to sell to somebody that's in your industry. This type of owner is usually, like I said, the guy that wants to get the highest value. But this is, the outside buyer is the only place we'll get that synergistic value. That's the only scenario that creates those cost savings in combination of two entities. So the sell to an outsider is the guy that has high mental readiness, get me out of here, I've had enough, but low financial readiness, he needs the money. So we need to sell this business for the most we can possibly get out of the market. Sell to an outsider. What are the pluses and minuses? You get the highest value, you're going to lose your job. So if you're not mentally ready to get out, you've just lost your job. Nope. They're not normally going to keep you on past some period of time. You give up strategic and financial control of the business, and the future value of the business, you are not going to participate in that. And you pay taxes and fees. Those are kind of the range. A recapitalization I've already kind of touched on a little bit. If you have low mental readiness and low financial readiness, then a recap is a good option for you to think about, because like I said, the PEG or private equity group is going to come in and buy a chunk of your business. They're going to want you to stay. They want you to professionally manage that company. And normally what PEGs bring to the table is they're financial people, they're numbers people. So they're not going to come in and replace your, many people think that if I sell my company to a private equity group, they're going to fire all my senior management. That's not the case. Most of them, they may bring in a CFO kind of person because they have access to top caliber people. So they normally will not replace your sales, your operations, certainly the CEO. They want you to stay because they want to provide you the capital to take your business to the next level. Recap, like I said, is not going to get you the highest value and it's not going to get you 100%. It's going to get you anywhere from 60 to 80%. It's going to be based on a multiple of your earnings. We kind of went over EBITDA, EBIT, or seller's discretionary earnings. Again, a recapitalization takes you from 90% of your net worth tied up in your business to a diversified portfolio that includes meeting your financial and personal goals. Employee stock ownership plan. It allows you, if you look at, I think I've already given you this statistic, but if only 20% of businesses for sale ever actually sell, that means 80% won't sell to an outsider. You have to create a buyer for your shares, and that's what this ESOP does. It allows you to diversify, yet you keep your job, you still can, you benefit your employees, and there's lots of statistical, there's an ESOP Institute that has a lot of free information. I can give anybody the website if they want to see me later, but there are statistic after statistic says that once you do an ESOP, your company becomes a better business because no one watches other people's money as much as they do their own. That might be Ben Franklin or something, but your company is going to increase in value when you do an ESOP because your employees are going to have a vested interest in the business.
John,
Yes.
so if they have an LLC right now, but they think an ESOP might be the way to go, should they be looking at converting over to a corporation?
It depends on the time frame because I think if you wanted to become a C Corp to take advantage of that, Section 1042, I think there may be a 5-year window. There's usually in the regs, there's things that keep you from jumping from one entity to the other and immediately getting the tax benefits. I think there's a time frame, and I think it's about 5 years. But that's a good thing to do if you are contemplating it in the future.
And can they do an ESOP as an LLC?
Yes. Any entity can do one. The LLC would be, I talked about the S Corp, it would be similar to an S Corp situation. You wouldn't get the tax deferred treatment, that's only a C Corporation. Like I said, ESOP diversifies the owner, allows him to take some cash off the table. He still maintains control if he's 10 or 15 years away from retiring. It's a good situation, it gets the benefit to the employees, it makes your business a better business.
John, one more
Yes.
question. So if the LLC is, they would have initially indicated that it was based upon shares of stock and not all LLCs necessarily start up that way. So what would they need
You
to
mean-
do?
It's based, LLCs, it's membership,
Membership.
units of interest, membership.
Okay.
So you would do the same thing. That doesn't change
Okay.
really the mechanics of anything.
Okay.
It's like me, my business is an LLC and I own, let's say, 100 units
Mhm.
and I'm the managing member.
Okay. So unit shares.
And valuation person looks at that. We take whatever the value is and then we look at whatever the unit is, whether it's a share of stock or a membership unit. To recap, a ESOP gets a lower value, fair market value. You do not sell, control, or bring in new partners, which is a good thing. Most of you are in business because you want to run the ship. And like I said, being the ESOP allows you to diversify a little, get your employees more involved, and still steer the ship. You participate in future growth of the business because, like I said, you can sell a third of your business today to your ESOP, and 5 years from now, you can sell the whole business to an external buyer. And it boosts morale of employees. Management buyout. I've kind of briefly already gone over that. The high level of financial readiness is recommended, and why is that? Because I said there's risk. You are going to be the bank and finance your managers. And we find that most people say, yes, I really want to be a business owner, because they see that you drive a nice car, you got a nice house. They want to enjoy the upside of being a business owner, but how about that part where it's slow and I have to kick in some money to cover payroll this week? You know, employees wouldn't want it then. So they want the upside, they don't want the downside. And that's almost universal. So just remember, if you sell to a management or MBO, you're going to be the bank. You're going to have to come out. And there are creative ways to have the business put some money aside and bonus it to the employees. They pay the tax, and then that money comes to you when you sell your stock to them. MBO is high financial readiness, low mental readiness. You can still stay on, you can still run the ship. And if I was going to sell to management, I would certainly still want to be involved. Yes?
John, in order to get to these stages, for example, management buyout or ESOP programs, you have to first have your business value correct.
Yeah, we always say that the valuation's kind of the keystone, it's kind of the thing that everything else rests on. And we were talking about financial and mental readiness. If you think about it, your financial future, I always like to use the motorcycle analogy, is the front wheel. That's steering things. Well, your business is the engine and the rear wheel, it's powering the vehicle. So financial planning, your personal financial planning should steer, and the company is the engine.
Now from I mean, obviously your firm probably does this as well, correct? Or
We do.
your LLC does this. From a cost standpoint of view, for a small business, how much does that generally cost?
Good point. Good question. We charge $4,500 for our benchmark valuation. And you'll find that CPA firms, we do a different sort of valuation. We like to say, if you do a valuation that's according to IRS regulations for an ESOP, that's a different valuation than what we do. We can do those, but that's not what we do. We look at the market, we look at the risk factors in your company. So we tell you, we like to give you a real world value, because you may say, John, I want to sell my company. So the value I've given you, I need to be able to take it to the market and sell it for that. So we do a probably 16, 17 page report, our benchmark value, and that's what we do as our product in the door. And what we do that most folks don't do is, like I said, we will update our valuation at 12 months and 4 months at no charge. Because most of the time, if it's an owner that's not ready to go anywhere, we're going to try to, what we like to do is help the owner and give them a template to grow their business and grow value. And that's where I think we have an advantage. I myself am a CPA tax person. Bob founded our company. He's an entrepreneur and sold his business to a publicly traded company. We got a guy that's got a sales background. We've got another one that was in logistics, had 40,000 people working for him at one time. We've got another guy that was 30 years as a banker. So we've got a wide range of business experience.
How does that generally differ? I mean, obviously, a company that's a design firm, interior design firm versus a defense contracting company. Do you value the company pretty much the same way? And for example, like something that's generally a huge check in the box for a company my size is to have in our industry, is to have like an improved accounting system, something along those lines. You attach value to that, and how does that differ between us and like a interior?
That's one of those things that's universal, systems and procedures.
Okay.
Different industries and businesses have nuances, but you're looking for the same basic core things in all businesses: good management, good procedures, good accounting records. It's the same, because I always tell people back when I was a CPA, all business owners like to think that their business is unique. Well, they're not. They're you're in business to what? You spend this for what you for service product, and you sell it for this, and you get to keep what's in the middle. So you either have inventory, you don't, you sell a product, or you sell a service, but business is business.
Is there a minimum amount of time that you should be in business before you look at doing some kind of valuation that is going to be beneficial for you?
Normally, in the first year or two, you don't have a track record, you don't have a starting point. So unless you have, now that's not universally the case. You may have a proprietary product and you've just patented it, and you can show a performer what you, and people do this all the time. They're looking for angel investors and that sort of thing, but the price is going to reflect that. So no normally, but yes in a specific case here or there. Management buyout, we've talked about some of the pluses and minuses. The big thing I always tell people is it's the risk. You're going to be bank, you're going to bear the risk. gifting programs. We talked about 76 million baby boomers, and they only had 46 million kids. They married later, they had less children, so we've got a senior citizen generation checking out, and there's not enough kids around to run all these businesses. John Ward wrote a book called Family Business Succession, The Final Test of Greatness. And the statistics in his book are that if you pass the business to your children, there's a 33% chance that that business will survive that second generation. If it survives the second generation, the percentage that will survive into the third is only 13%. So I've got a client that's got 8 shoe stores. He's got his business model down. He knows how to make money. He's like, I'm going to give it to John. I said, no, we're not going to give John anything. John's not that responsible. He orders products for you, but he doesn't. When somebody needs to be hired or fired, Joe does that. So I always urge, and Tom Deans wrote a good book about passing your, I think it's called Every Family's Business. It talks about passing it on to your children and the pitfalls of that. And there are many. Let's face it, baby boomers are more driven. They're defined by what they do, their work. Gen X, they're materialistic, but they also don't want to work for it. So I tell people most of the time, your kids won't work as hard as you do. They've sat and watched you work 70 hours a week for the last 5 years, and they're like, I don't want to do that. I want to have fun. So I always say, let's don't ever sell it to our kids. Or let's don't give it to them. If we want to do it, we'll start selling it to them. And you know, think about that. And I heard I'm in a business roundtable, and there's a guy there that's a son, and his father, which he went out and worked 5 years for other owners, which I always tell people, if you're going to put a son or daughter in business, let them go work for somebody else before they come into the business and become what they call the SOB, the son of the boss. I hadn't heard that one till the other day. You thought that was going to, you thought I was a Marine. So am I running, since we started late, where are we all
It's
the time?
10:45.
Okay, I'll try to wrap up. I know we started a little late, but that was not my fault.
That's right. I don't think they mind if you go a few minutes over.
Let's talk about gifting. You're going to get the lowest of all values if you gift or sell to your children, because fair market value, we already said, we had fair market value, investment value, and synergistic value. Fair market value is the lowest, and we're going to add to that what's called a discount for lack of marketability, because shares in GM, if you buy those, you can sell them any day, call your stockbroker, and he can have them sold in an hour. Shares of a small business aren't marketable. You have to find a buyer. So we call that a discount for lack of marketability, just something to keep in the back of your mind. There's also a discount for lack of control. And think about this. If I was going to buy 20% of your business, I pay my money, and then what do I do? Whatever, you've got 80%, right? I got 20, I'm just along for the ride. I always tell people, if you don't have 21 or 51%, you don't have control, so you are just along for the ride. I've got a situation where a father owns 51% and son owns 49%. Father's not doing what he should do. Son's trapped. He has to wait. Of course, the guy's got a lifestyle that should lead him to check out earlier than most. I mean, I joke about that, but that's true, because he is trapped until his father decides he wants to sell his shares or something. I mean, David's trapped. I mean, the guy's taking money out of the business. He shouldn't. He shows up. He's the one that does the estimating for the business. Well, sometimes they're really successful. Oh, and the other thing he likes to do at the end of the year, he says, we've got this profit. We don't want to pay taxes. They buy cars, they buy just stuff. You know, they don't ever think about keeping some money and investing in business. But the son is along for the ride. There's nothing he can do. That's what we call a discount for lack of control. And after we've been through this process, we know the value of our business, we set our goals, financial mental readiness, we know what type of exiting owner we are, and actually any of you, no matter what stage you're in, will fit into one of those boxes. We've learned and chosen your exit option, and then you execute on your plan. An exit strategy takes you from wherever you are, takes the guesswork out of planning for an illiquid wealth. You go from illiquidity to liquidity if you're at that stage. Your personal wealth that is trapped is liberated through some internal or external transfer, whether it's to your employees, to your managers, to an outside company, to your children. You go from private company risk to diversification, and your wealth at risk to wealth protection strategy. So you go from having all your money on the table to having your money more securely diversified. Working to retirement for baby boomers. Well, I think we're going to see half the baby boomers continue to work till they drop because, like I said, the generation before the baby boomers saved a lot of money. I can remember my father, he was very, very tight. I was not quite as tight. Now I'm doing okay, but I certainly didn't have, if I looked in proportion what he had set aside to what I have set aside, he did a much better job than me. And I think that's the case for most business owners and baby boomers. Like I said, the process we go through comes from exiting your business, protecting your wealth, which is a strategic guide for owners and their advisors. And I often tell people, if you tell your financial advisor to calculate a value gap and he can't tell you what you would need from the sale of your business, then maybe you should get a different financial advisor. Because it's a really simple, basic process. Most advisors, we find that business owners are not necessarily the best financial advisor clients because most of their money's in their business. You don't have a portfolio to manage, which is how they make a percentage of whatever you have invested. That's how they get paid. Our website is strategicadvisorsnc.com. There's my email address. Like I said, I meant to bring a book or two today, but I didn't. If you will shoot me an email or go to the website, you can request a copy of this book. We also do newsletters on a bi-weekly basis if you want us to plug you in so you can, and we talk about different topics. One newsletter we'll talk about ESOPs. The next one we'll talk about mental readiness. The next one we may talk about a management buyout. So we cover a whole range of exit topics. Be glad to put you on our email list. And I think there's some evaluation forms. I had one and Mary had one, or excuse, Susan had one.
We would appreciate if you would take
Any
just a
Any
minute to
questions?
fill this out before you go.
I know we've covered a lot of ground. Yes.
And
You had mentioned a book on the ESOP,
Mhm.
book on information for ESOPs.
I have a basic ESOP book that's a little paperback. If any of you would like that, you can shoot me a email. If you want to sit down and talk about, normally if you're thinking about an ESOP process, the first step, well, like I always say, know the value of your business. The next step is called an ESOP feasibility study. What you do is look at the number of employees versus what your company's making and that sort of thing to see how it plays out 3 to 5 years down the road.
Now, John, I'm sorry, were you done? What's your question?
Yes.
Were you done? Okay, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
Go ahead.
John, real quick, do you have like in terms of I guess standards, size standards, dollar value standards, things like that in terms of like, I mean, I'm sure most of us in here are all small businesses. When should we consider it? I know she was starting to kind of ask some of those questions. Are there dollar values, are there size standards, employee standards that you would consider us to strongly consider, whether it be ESOPs or other, obviously, everybody should probably want to know the value of their business, but after that, I'm sure you would tell her something specific, but I'm trying to get a lot of this information in my head so that I can think about it the right way, and also think about it, I have a business partner, consider it with him as well, because I have to articulate a lot of this information to him.
There are, and I've got an excellent newsletter I can send you, the lower middle market, which is what all of us operate in, any business owners, is broken up into about 4 segments. The first segment is the smallest of those businesses, which is, we call it a solopreneur. He might have up to 5 employees, but still basically he or she does most everything in the business, and he has people helping him with the administrative or certain pieces of it. And that's the smallest part. The next part is kind of the micro, and that would be someone with 5, I didn't say revenue, and that might be revenues up to $2 million or so. And it's normally profits of, let's say, around $300,000 or maybe a little less, because that's normally, that provides one person his living, his job, and you graduate up from there. The top part of the lower middle market is 900 million in revenue, so that's almost where you would become a publicly traded company.
Is that gross or is that all?
That's gross. We always tell people that our customers, clients range from about $1 million in value to about 25 million in value. So you can kind of think of that
Or a
as,
small business, basically.
yeah. And if you're under $1 million in value, then that's normally business brokers like Sunbelt does it. But here's what they do. They sell, they're licensed real estate agents. So if you've got a business and you got a piece of real estate that's in the business, they're gonna make the money on the real estate. They don't really try to, they wouldn't come in and help you with growth strategies. And we work with businesses that are valued less than $1 million. We did one last year that was, I don't know, $700,000. Actually, one of our partners ended up buying the business because he thought it was a great little business. So we don't rule out anyone just because of size. Because the same principles work if you've got a good business, whether it's 10 people or 100 people. You know, you've got transferable value.
From a portfolio standpoint, have you dealt with, I mean, obviously the different types of businesses here, what's the largest percentage of your portfolio?
We, over the last 5 or 6 years, have dealt with everything from the tennis marketing firm, wholesale distribution. We work with government contractors. We work with some service providers. Like I tell people, the basics of business are all pretty much the same. Just like in government services, I actually have private equity group connections now that are looking, and I didn't know this until a few months ago, that are actually looking to buy government service providers. They see that as a niche, and even though we don't know what's coming out of DC, they see that as a good investment. So they've actually got a platform company here in Northern Virginia somewhere, and they're doing add-ons because he and I are going to meet about a couple of potentials down in Virginia Beach.
So services versus products, or both?
Both. Wholesale distribution or business-to-business services.
Okay.
We find that you see the most transferable value in those types of things.
Okay, so no true like, devaluing, like for example, sequestration, everything that's going on right now with government and some unpredictability from whether it be a PEG or some of the other groups that may be looking to buy, see any sort of, especially, with my company, you don't see any sort of, devaluation or concern from that standpoint.
Historically, both sides make a lot of noise, but at the end, when have they cut back government in size that much? And the private equity groups, like I said, if they didn't think it was a good sector, they wouldn't be out there buying businesses like yours. They think they can still get, and the government's got to get these services from somewhere. Their needs are not going to go away. They're going to need space for people. They're going to need computer services. They're going to need supplies. It's not going. It's not going down like I would have, like intuitively you would think so.
Yeah, I was just curious how
Even my
devalued.
one company that I'm actually taking to market now is a contractor who provides electrical services to Army, Navy, I mean, for a Forest Service, that sort of, you're looking at getting a good price. I mean, it's just, I think it's just a blip. I might be wrong, and nobody has a crystal ball on that. So that's a,
Yeah, no, I was just curious, you know, just from your perspective.
But maybe that's what the equity group see, is the government getting out and doing a lot of their own stuff and farming it out to consultants. And, you know, regardless of what happens in government, I mean, they're still gonna have their things that they do.
it's not going away. It's a good racket, and they're gonna stick to it, I think.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I appreciate your time.
Just, I want to say one thing, maybe kind of a comment. I'm in a quandary. I have a client who was recently approached by a motivated seller and took on the business without there being a valuation or financial records, and is now looking to purchase real estate and has, no records, and another business that seemed to be doing well, but again, not having a valuation. So I guess that's a plug that is so necessary. And how often do you run across people where they don't have the financial records that they need, and what do you do?
Almost no business owners have done a valuation and gone through the process. 65%. We do, sometimes we'll come in and do a value for a bank or an insurance company or a bonding agency just to set that benchmark.
Yeah, I mean, I just say just from my perspective, I mean, I see like an evaluation like that being good because we've experienced a lot of growth in the last, really in the last 9 months. And, some of the things that you mentioned highlighted, some of the processes in which, we're trying to, implement in our company. Showing how you increase value to your company or decrease is also really just good for establishing, good policies, processes, things that, sometimes you get caught up in growing your business, but, stopping to actually manage it, so.
Just going through the planning process and the evaluation process, whether it's with me or anybody, is going to make your company a better company. You're going to, like I said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. That valuation gives you sort of a place to start, a place on the map, so you can get to where you want to go. And that doesn't matter what your goal is. If your goal is to have the best, most profitable business, or if your goals are more personal in nature, you still can't. That's the starting point, is that value.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And I would encourage you to check out his website. They have a